guess, develop the next generation of young professional players, really. So just a little bit about myself. My background really started as a young player. I was in the youth system at Liverpool. Hence, I've probably got a similar accent to Ray at times. But so started in the youth system at Liverpool. Went through the age groups from a young age. From 10, I went through till I was 19, and then at 19, I was released from Liverpool as a young player, really. But I think that gave me a real good grounding in terms of obviously some of the coaches I worked with and the huge football club and some of the players that I played with during that time. Gave me a real good grounding. From there, went on and had spells at Preston North End and Notts Forest over a season before. Then really I dropped back into semi-professional while I went back to college, and eventually fell into teaching side of things and running a couple of football programs in colleges. As part of them years, really, I also spent some time in the US. My brother was on a scholarship out in Wichita, Kansas. We used to come over to the US quite a lot in summers and coached. But sort of 10 years ago, I was offered a position at Blackburn Rovers. Firstly, it was around looking after the education of players and doing some coaching and working certainly with the 9s right through to the 18s, really. That quickly evolved for me. Within 2-3 years, I was into football operations at the club. 4 years ago, 4 years ago, I was offered the position of head of academy director, really, which for me was sort of going full circle from a youth player at Liverpool back into the academy system as heading up one of the best Category 1 academies in the UK. So that's where I'm currently at, and hopefully spend a lot more years. But that's sort of a little bit about my background, really, and where I've come from, and where I'm currently at. I think on the back of that is obviously, how this link came about with Eastern. So for me, probably, a good couple of years ago now, we were thinking as a club, it was really important as a club that we wanted to expand our partnerships, really, with a key emphasis of how can we look to try and recruit some of the talent from places that really we don't have any scouting systems or recruitment systems in place. So I sort of looked at it and thought, where are the key places where we could potentially look to tie in with some clubs. I got to know Ray quite a good few years ago now when he first came over with Eastern into Blackburn and brought some teams. Some of you guys may have been involved in them. So from sort of them visits and getting to know Ray and Bo and the conversations, listen, firstly, I think what really struck me with the club was I just felt as though, and it's really important to me because I implement it within our academy, that first of all, you have to have good people around you. You have to have good people that are hardworking, honest, trustworthy. I think that's really important. And what I felt as though from them early sort of meetings and the time that we spent together is that Eastern had some really fantastic people, who I really warmed to personally, as well as from the club side. So I felt that was really important. Is the good people in the club that we're going to link in with? Are they willing? I think this was an important point. Whatever clubs we were linking in with, were they willing to share ideas? Were they willing to work together? Because that's really important. That I feel for this partnership that we've put in place is that we're all on the same sort of hymn sheet and looking to work together. I felt as though that was the case. I felt as though that was the case, that there's good people at the club. The second thing for me as well was around the values. We have some values at our academy about honesty, integrity, humility, hard working. Again, when I spent time with Eastern and you guys, I felt as though your club valued itself very much around them, which was important for me and our football club, that we could tie in with someone with similar real core values, really, which was important. So on the back of all that, I also felt as though working with some of you guys and observing some of you guys in some of the training sessions at Blackburn, I felt as though there was talented players in the club, which is important because eventually it'd be great if we were sharing our programs and sharing these ideas, that eventually one of you guys could potentially come and play over at Blackburn. That would be fantastic for us all. So I felt as though there was some real good talent in the club, which was also important. So there was lots of lots of things that I warmed to, and I felt that Eastern would be an ideal partner for us in terms of that. Hence, on the back of that, we came into a formal agreement, really, and it is a formal, legally binding agreement now where you guys, Eastern FC, are our main partner in the US, which is fantastic, and I can only thank, obviously, Ray and Bo and all you guys for coming on board, really, with us as a football club. So that's how we sort of come about in terms of the relationship we've got, and I'll touch on the benefits of that as we go through some of the player development. I think it's worth highlighting that, okay, Blackburn Rovers, for some of you guys, who are we, what are we about, what's our academy about? So Blackburn Rovers, for those that may not know, we're actually the first club to win the Premier League title back in 1995. So we are one of the first and one of the few, I think, which is really proud for us that we are Premier League title winners. Alongside that, our academy categorisation. So what happened in the UK, probably about 8, 9, 10 years ago, the Premier League brought in what's called the EPP, which is the Elite Player Performance Plan. And the idea behind that was very much that they wanted to increase the talent, homegrown talent within England, to try and break through into first team, to raise the standards of the game, really. So they brought in the EPP, where every academy in England had to go through what they called an audit process. Basically, we as an academy went for the Category 1 status and achieved that, and we have been since the first audit took place. So since then, there's been 3 cycles of audits, and we've retained our Category 1 status. What that means is that there's another 24 Category 1 clubs in England. That puts us alongside Manchester United, Manchester City, Chelsea, Arsenal, all the top Premier League clubs. So we also have Category 1 academies. So again, for us, it's fantastic that, we sit within that, I guess, that core group of your top clubs in England who have some of the most outstanding youth players that you'll see, really, and we're in there competing and doing really well. So we are a Category 1. What that means for us in terms of that is that we have to invest £3 million a year into our academy system. So we spend £3 million. We have to have certain facilities in place around indoor, outdoor pitches, grass pitches. We have to have certain staff in place, so the academy houses 38 full-time staff across various disciplines: sports science, medical, coaching, recruitment, education, analysis. And then on the back of that, 60 odd staff part-time, from recruitment, coaching, again, medical. So it's a huge operation that we run. But the benefits of being Category 1 is that, obviously, the games program. So we currently have our games program against some of the best clubs in youth football around Europe, really, if you talk about Manchester City, United, Liverpool, Everton. So it's massive in terms of the experience that our young players are getting as part of that. As well as that, it allows us to compete, really, for the best young talent that we can get. A lot of the youth players in England now want to, first and foremost, will ask the question, what categorisation are you as a club? Because, again, young players want to be in a Category 1 programme because of the benefits that brings to their development, really. So that's where we're sort of at in terms of a little bit of background, obviously, on the club and our academy system. Bo, Ray, I don't know whether you want to add anything or ask anything around that, or...
No, I think you touched all the points there perfectly, and unless there are other questions, I think we move on to the presentation on player development. If you're good with that, I can get it going.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's also worth highlighting just before we do that, Bo, that when I talk about the club, we obviously, in terms of, we have an academy side for the boys, which runs from under 8s right through to under 23s. But we also have, alongside that, we have a girls program, which again is, in terms of stature, they are obviously we have the Women's Super League as the top league in England. Our girls setup sits in the league below that, quite similar to Premier League and Championship. The club currently invests £200,000 a year into the girls and the women's program. We are a centre of excellence, which again runs through from from U9 right up to a first team. So a similar model on the girls' side that's similar to the boys' side. And the good thing, for us is that we share a lot of the resources across the boys' academy and the girls' academy in terms of the program, because the women's game now in England is becoming bigger and bigger, which is brilliant. There's certain criteria now similar to the audit of the boys' academy that the women's side has to go through. So the standards are being raised, and it's brilliant that we get to share the opportunity with the women's side of our football club. The importance of that as well. So we do have a model at both sides really of women's and men's side. So it's great for us really.
That's great. I will get us over to the presentation if you're ready for that.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do really is just to give everyone just a little bit of an insight, as to how we develop players. And I think, as I said before, the good thing about this is that a lot of the work that we spent years putting in place, and now where we're at, I've spoke to Ray and Bo around this, and a lot of these ideas that we're sharing into Eastern, and I even we spoke earlier, Bo, and around some of the work that you guys have started to do and would like to do moving forward, and being part of our program, which is really important for this partnership to work. That obviously some of the work that we do back in Blackburn is transferable and being implemented within Eastern, and us taking some ideas from the US I think is important, because there's certainly something that you guys do that I'm aware of in your club that's really fantastic work going on, so it allows us to do that. But this what I'm going to talk through is very much around how do we develop young players. As I said before, we've got a system where they come in at under 8 and they can go right through the system to an under 23 age group before they reach our first team. So there's a vast amount of work that we put in as a club and as academy around the development of young players. What I'll start with really is what we call player competency. So for us to be able to develop players, we have to, at certain points throughout their development pathway, we have to have some criteria that really we expect them to have reached. And just on the screen that you can all see, it's just an example really. So we call these player competencies. So I've put someone here for an under 9 to under 11 in our what we call foundation phase for a defender. I've then next to that put in for an under 15. Again, it's more position specific, but a fullback number 2 or number 3. Just to really give you an idea. So we have these competencies in place for technical reading of the game, which is tactical, physical and attitude. And what we're saying to our players that at the end of your under 9 season, this is where you need to be at as a player in relation to these competencies. And we build each year. So as they go to under 10, under 11, they come out of that. Under 12, there'll be some more competencies, under 13s, and we build a pathway for them with these specific competencies in place that we can measure their performance against. Because I think that's really important for any club, that if you're measuring the development of a young player, you have to have something to measure them against. These competencies are very much for Blackburn Rovers. I think that's important to emphasise. Other clubs in England may have different competencies to what we have, but this is specific to the type of player that we want to come through our system and play in our first team. So it's really important. And these are the competencies, the building blocks as the players go through the age groups as to where we expect them to be at. In relation to that, I think it's important to highlight the next slide that Bo's just put up. So this is what we expect at the first team level. Now, again, it's around, we call it part, physical, attitude, reading of the game and technical. However, with these competencies, if you're in our first team, these have to be at an elite standard, the highest elite excellent standard for you to go and play in our first team. So what I will say is that these building blocks will eventually land you to these ones here, okay, around the first team. And again, that's what we're constantly measuring performance against to get you to this end goal for our first team. So there's a lot of work from the staff that goes putting them in place. It's then about measuring them. It's making sure they link to our philosophy, to our key principles and our style of play. And actually, when young players go out and train, these are the type of competencies that they're working on to develop. So that would be from a first team perspective. If you just move to the next one, Bo. Okay. And what we're saying, and this can be a huge debate in itself, and there may be some questions at the end, but our message really as an academy, as I say, in England, academies will be different, but our message is it's development over winning. I always say to the staff really and the parents in our club that the most important football team to win in our football club is the first team. That is about winning. Ultimately, they have to win games. Ideally, hopefully, they win more than they lose, and we might get back in the Premier League. But it's really important. But for us as an academy, we have to have a culture of development. Now, on the back of that, I'm not saying in any way I want all our young players to win every game. I want all our young players to win in every training session, win in every race, be the best in the gym, be the best in education in the classroom, get the best grades you can. So have that competitive winning mentality. And I also understand that our coaches will want to win. And I haven't got a problem with that at all. I think from my perspective, with coaches and with the staff, the winning mentality that they may have can't override the development aspect. So if I give a little bit of an example, before I became academy director, we used to have coaches, and I've had these conversations, we used to have coaches that were worried about losing a game on a Sunday as to how it would be, an under 11 game on a Sunday, how would that reflect on a Monday that we got beat? Now for me and our club, that can't happen, because what was then happening, we have a philosophy of playing out from the back, playing through the thirds. All of a sudden in that game, the coach is 2-0 down. If they have a winning mentality and they've got to win the game, suddenly they start going direct. Suddenly it comes away from our philosophy, which impacts the development of the individual. So it's just really important that as a culture within our academy, that we're about developing young players. I think it's massively important. On the back of that, it's about developing the individual and not the team, and that's part of our culture. Great that the boys get together, the girls come together and they play in a team. Obviously, that's what football's about. But when we're developing young players and working with players within the academy, you have to develop the individual, because they all develop at different stages. They all go through growth at different stages. They all need different needs. Someone might need to work on left foot passing. Someone might need to work on 1v1 defending. So I think it's just important to highlight that we focus on the individual, and it's about the development side. So how do we do that? I think it's important to highlight, and again, Bo's put it up here. So how do we develop? How do we measure? How do we monitor progress of young players within the academy system? So we have what we call a player development review process. So at the start of every season, every player will come in and they will sit down with the coaching staff, sports science, in one meeting. And we'll discuss for the next 8 weeks, this is what you need to work on. This is what you need to develop. These are your individual learning objectives moving forward over an 8-week period. The player will walk away with an individual learning plan with their individual learning objectives for the next 8 weeks. It's important. They will link back to the competencies that I spoke about before as to what is the criteria that they need to achieve to progress through the system. There's no point putting ILOs that are totally different from them. So the individual learning objectives will link back to the competencies, okay? And that sort of a process around that. So the player will have an ILP for an 8-week period, and we have specific individual learning sessions, ILO sessions. They will also, it's the skill of the coach really in the theme sessions and the coaching sessions to draw them ILOs out. I'll give you an example. If I've got a player who's, one of his ILOs is to improve his 1v1 defending, I might be doing a session on crossing and finishing. I can still draw that ILO out with that fullback because I need my wide player to attack the fullback to get a cross into finish. But I can still, the skill of the coach will be run the session, work with the players, but have a focus on the fullback in terms of his one-on-one defender. And I'll draw his ILO out and I'll work with him. So we have specific ILO sessions. We can do it in coaching sessions, the example of just give. Players are encouraged to work away from the academy. So we set homework tasks, really important, using video footage. They can practice. We encourage it as much as possible to work on ILOs. And then we link them into the technical sessions, as I said before. So that goes for an 8-week period. At the end of them 8 weeks, we have another review process with the player. And this is every player within the academy. So from 8 up to 23s, we have 180 players. So we'll have a specific, at week 8, shutdown week of the program, where we'll have a lot of reviews and sitting down with players. We will go over the ILP and the ILOs. We'll discuss what ones potentially still need working on, what ones we feel as though they've progressed on, and we may give a new ILO for the next 8-week block, and we go to work again. So that's sort of the learn and plan process and how that's implemented. And as I say, that hopefully, and what we've found is that by the end of each year, as the player comes through the system, the ILO and the ILPs are a massive learning really for young players, and allow us to monitor and measure performance against them competencies of trying to get them in our first team. So then review processes have become really, really important and massively important for developing players in line with our competencies really. If you just move to the next one, sorry Rob. So just a little bit of an example. I spoke about ILPs. This is an example of one for an under 18. So front really, we'll have some data on there around the player, some testing we do. The yellow highlights positions played. We'll always have super strengths because every player has super strengths and they can be worked on. But then the individual learning objectives, again, go across physical, attitude, reading of the game, which is tactically and technically, and we'll make them points. What sits behind that is really the plan. So if you go to the next slide, Bo, this is the plan that all our players at the end of their meetings will walk away with. Clearly highlights the ILOs in the different areas: physically, attitude, reading the game, technical. How are they going to do it? So how are they going to work on these? When are they going to do it? So what part of the week, when in the program, and who's responsible really? So there'll be across there. The players always, what I talk about there, sports science, psychologists and analysts. So there's a massive amount of resources, human resources, that sit behind the individual player to make sure that they're working across their individual learning objectives really. And there's a vast amount of planning that goes into this to ensure it's closely monitored. So it's a huge process. However, I know we've got the resources in terms of doing that being a Category 1 program, and that's the benefit of it. But I do feel as though, and speaking to Bo and Ray, as a club, this is something you're starting to look at, and I know you've done reviews and sit down, but these are the type of things that we can have an impact on really in partnering with you guys at Eastern. So that's sort of how the plan would look, and the players would walk away with that really to work on for the next 8 weeks. If you just go to the next one, Bo, just linking it. So I think it was important to highlight again how it links. So that was a learning plan, and what I've done there, this was the end goal, what I said about the end goal for our players. This is a first team player. Now even there, some of the points I've highlighted. So this is a fullback, can defend 1v1 situations, blocks, interceptions and tackles. If you go back one, Bo, to the previous one, it's in here. Work on defending 1v1 situations, be aggressive, and work on timing. So even there, we have an under 18 player who's got an ILO that actually links to what we need at first team level. And that will go back, as I say, from under 9 right through. As the players get older, it becomes more in depth. Certainly as the players become in on the full time, 18s, 23s. But there is a system and a process that sits behind these learning objectives and the importance of it and how it all comes together for the end goal really to produce players for our first team. Okay, next slide, Bo. I think it was just important then, so just highlighted around the competencies of players, how do we go through it in terms of player development, but then there's a plan, and I think it's important to highlight the training schedule really and how it all ties into, we need to do all that work, we need to cover all the ILOs, we need to make sure players are on individual learning plans. So what program, weekly schedule do we put in place? So this is an example really for under 14s, for example. So they will train 2 evenings in the week. That will consist of some sports science, some gym, and I've highlighted their ILO. So they will have 30 minutes 7 o'clock on a Monday evening, they will have 30 minutes where they will have a focus specifically on their learning plan and a learning objective from their plan. Then at 7:30 for 45 minutes, they will drop into a coaching session that's based on the themes and the philosophies. Similar model on the Thursday evening, and then Saturday morning, they will train for 2 hours with some ILO work in there, some coaching phase specific practices. What I would like to also bring in is that we also have a day release program. So players from under 13 to under 16 are on what's called a hybrid training model, which incorporates a day release program. And what that means is that those players will come out of school for 1 day a week. So under 14s come out of school on a Wednesday, and they will spend the whole day with us. Now, I think what's really important to highlight here, we have a big emphasis on academics and education. And if any of them players who want to come on the day release program into the academy, if they're with regards to grades, academically, they're falling behind, the grades are dropping, their performance, their attitude, the work in school is not at the required standard, not just for the school, but for us as a football club, they won't be allowed in on the day release program. So what we've found is that all the players want to come and spend the day at the academy, I guess like being a young professional. They do make sure that work, grades, everything, and it actually enhances academic performance, we do find, which I think is really important. Just underneath that is just highlights what a day release would look like. So they would do some video analysis work, whether that's individual or team, from the weekend maybe, or a game. They will do some gym work. They will do some work on the grass, 2 sessions in the day, and they will do an education. They get 45 minutes to an hour education where they will do any school work as part of that. So they spend the full day within the academy. So that sort of scheduling allows us to incorporate individual learning plans to make sure that the competencies are being met right through the system. So that's where we're at in terms of obviously a player development model, really, and just some of the work that we do as an academy. Obviously, behind that, there's a vast amount of work that goes on to put that in place, which I think is really important, that the work that we do. Okay, I think I've obviously highlighted a lot of information there, and I think, is there anything, Raybo, or any questions or anything I may have you feel as though I could touch on? Or
Yeah, Stuart, first of all, thank you. That was, really, really well done, and eye-opening, I think, for our coaches and for players. I got a bunch of text messages on my phone, how everyone was enjoying that. And thank you for describing our partnership and why, you guys at Blackburn were wanting to grow internationally. I know you have, I think it was Singapore and a couple other locations as well.
Yeah.
And you sort of saw the club and the connection with Ray, and all of a sudden now we're doing this, and it's only going to get better and growing again. I mean, we're meeting again as a coaching staff with you Tuesday morning, if I'm not mistaken, right, on session plan. Yeah. So it doesn't stop. And wanted to go over something you and I talked about a couple days ago, which was the discussion on you have different ages in the club, boys and girls, and at certain ages they either become professional or they don't. And I talked to you about our process where in April, May, we have tryouts. You really don't have that same similar process. Your tryouts are almost daily sometimes. And, maybe you can expand upon that and the different levels players can grow into and what, regarding the player development process.
Yeah, I think cheers, Rod. I think it's worth highlighting that obviously the system in England and how we operate, really. So, ultimately as an academy and as a football club, we want to recruit the best players that we can, because I don't like putting it, because I don't like putting it as a business as such, because it's young players and I don't think like that. But ultimately, the owners of the football club, and the way it works in England, that it does become a business, because it's about producing players who either go and play in our first team and bring success, or are sold like a Phil Jones was from our football club for £16 million to Manchester United. So the bigger picture is, it is a business, but I think from my perspective, I don't look at it like that. I think it's important that any player that comes into our system is very much coming in and enjoying being in the system and loving learning and you know what, it's a journey and it's up and down, and who knows. I always say to players and parents, enjoy the journey, because there's a small percentage that actually go and play in anyone's first team or become professional footballers. So I think from my perspective, it's really important that they come in and enjoy the journey, be a sponge, learn as much as you can, work as hard as you can, be fully committed to the program, and you see where it takes you. I think going back from what Bo said, ultimately we're about recruiting and trying to get the best players that we can. So our system isn't a sort of tryout. We have scouts who go and watch local games. We have scouts who are nationally around the country who are watching games to try and identify talent. Once that talent is identified, they come into, it's called an advanced training group really, and it's a group that sits under the academy, and they get assessed within that before dropping into the academy system as part of that. But that is ongoing throughout the year, so there's no specific set time. It's ongoing throughout the year, so we've always got trialists coming in the building as part of that process, really, a constant turnaround of players. And the bit I don't like, and I guess it's part of the job, but we have to make decisions on young players. So 9s, 10s, 11s and 12s will all sign for 1 year. At the end of the year, we have to sit down and make a decision, and that's where the competencies come in, the ILOs, that if they're not at the level that we need them to be at for a Category 1 programme, we have to sit them down with parents and players and say, ultimately, unfortunately, you're not going to be for us as a player within the system. We then try and support them to get them another club as much as we can, and they're difficult conversations, but we have to be open and honest with the player and the parent, because they commit a massive amount of time and expense, really, although our system isn't where, young players have to pay, but there's still a commitment to coming up and down to the academy 4 or 5 times a week, just in terms of financially, but I think in time and effort. So it's important that we're open and honest. But what I always say to 9s to 11s is that although it's a year contract, I try and want to keep them young players. They should be coming through our foundation phase, really. If we do our assessment and recruitment right, they should be with us till at least 11.
That's great. And I think you had mentioned to me at 16 or 17, you're looking to sign them to a professional contract, and some actually do get signed and some don't. And then that's a player pool you have even for your first team, and or players get loaned out. But players can also still be in the club at 16 or 17, not be professionals as well, right, in the academy. So there's sort of 2 different pathways there. Yeah,
so obviously at 16, when they finish school here at year 11, we have to then make a decision whether to bring them in as young scholars, so they will come in full time and be paid by the football club on a 2-year scholarship program, which involves obviously education. Alongside that, they have an education program and they're with us 2 years. They then, at the end of under 18, it's whether we have to offer them professional contracts or make a decision that they're not going to be for us. That professional contract gets them one step away from the first team environment, really. Some of them young players are going into the first team environment as young professionals, which is brilliant for us. I think the average match day squad this year had 5 academy graduates in at the first team. Out of all the minutes available for first team games up until this break, 25% of them minutes were taken from academy graduates. So that says a lot about our programme and the work that we're doing, that at this moment in time, it is working. I'll go back to when the owners took over 9-10 years ago. We've done some other work where it's probably one of the few departments across the club, but we're actually £8 million in profit in terms of over that 10-year period. It's cost £30 million to run the academy, but we've actually sold or benefited from sell-ons and add-ons of academy graduates, £38 million. So we're actually £8 million in profit from the programme, which is, again, it's massively important. And that there's such a vast amount of investment. Well, what's the return on that investment? So it tells us that our programme and the work that we're doing with our young players is a successful one at this moment in time, and hopefully that continues. We've got one boy who come through from 6 years of age who's now playing on our first team. So it's been brilliant in that sense.
Yeah, and I'll say something that Ray and I talked about yesterday, which is that's sort of what we like to see here at the club as well, when the players do arrive when they're early 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, which we have a bunch, and we love to see them graduate through when they're 17, 18 years old. And sure enough, it's a higher percentage of those players are the ones getting college scholarships or a college invite, or actually playing freshman year in college on their teams and getting minutes like you're talking about in our world here in the States, right? Where a good percentage of the players are going after, a position on a college team. Now with our connection with Blackburn, now there's an actual pathway to a professional organization in Europe, which is another benefit to all of this. And yeah, we love to see it when the young ones get through. And as you're saying, they might have had winning seasons or losing seasons or whatever, but they stuck with it and battled through and had that winning mentality, and then got to a level where they can move on. No, that's
I think on that, Bo, sorry, I think just it is worth highlighting. I mentioned earlier about what attracted us to Eastern. I think that was another one of the key points, that we have a big emphasis as well on players at the end. If it's not to be at 18 and they've been with us to a load of difficult conversations, it's where can we then support them to go and further their career, whether that be at a lower club than Blackburn Rovers, whether that be, we've had some boys who've gone over to the States and played at college. We've had some boys who've gone to universities in the UK. I think what's really important for us is that we provide that support mechanism, that once that we know that they're done with us, it's not cast aside, it's to give them as much support. And I think that's one of the big things that I felt that Eastern, having the conversations with Ray, Bo and the guys there, I think you have a fantastic work ethic to try and get your players graduating into college programs, which I think is massively important. And it's brilliant really that you do that.
Stuart, Bo, if I could just add something there. Yeah, this is Brandon back, by the way. One other thing as well, Stuart, that I'd love for you to address, since we're talking about player development, is, we have the opportunity to bring players to you guys. We've done it several times for trips. The players come back and they talk about how unbelievable the training experience was and how great the facilities, how first class everything was. And I know there's some people on this call that were actually just went on our family trip over winter break, where you personally drove with your families an hour and a half to bring me 25 tickets to games. Is just, I don't know if people realize the kind of relationship that we have. And I just wanted to, first of all, express my thanks in front of all these people, because, and just let you know how fortunate we are to have this relationship with you guys. And it's just unbelievable. So just wanted to thank you for that. But also, yeah, if you could just tell us a little bit about your facilities and that experience when our players go there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a massive benefit of being Category 1, because you have to have a certain elite level facility in place. And we're very fortunate for you guys who have been over. We've actually got 2 sites. So the academy sits at, I guess, the bottom of the hill, I call it, but at the bottom of the hill. And within it's probably a 3-4 minute walk up the hill, you're at the senior training centre. And we're actually split. Our program is split across both sites, because at the senior training centre we have an indoor 4G AstroTurf, and that's a really lovely facility indoor. Just on the other side to that, we have an outdoor 4G floodlit as part of that. We also have up there a gym and a pool area for players. Then down at the academy, again, we have probably 8 pitches, grass pitches, that are fantastic. There's no excuse for a bad touch on them pitches. And then obviously a training gym area with classrooms. So the actual calibre of facilities are first class. And hopefully some of you guys can experience that more as you come over on trips. And then I know in the past that they've really enjoyed going out on grass that's immaculate and enjoying the coaching, but it's great to be Cat 1 to have that level of facility. Really, it's a massive benefit for the players, the staff, to work in the environment we do. We're very lucky, really.
Thank you, Stuart. Ray, anything maybe you want to add a little?
Yeah, I'd like to ask something, Stu. You talked about all player development, but can you run something about nutrition? Could you say something about what the players at a young age come in? Do you educate them on their food and all of that type of stuff?
That's perfect. That goes into our next webinar next week.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think more important, what I always say, it's like if you're investing £3 million into your academy system, what's the point, I guess we call it, but what's the point in putting rubbish fuel in the players and it's costing you £3 million for staff, facilities? You've got to give them everything to give them the best chance of coming through the system. So we have a academy nutritionist who comes in, and we do education sessions with players and parents from 9s through to 16s. with the 15s and 16s, we will give them dietary advice and programs that they can go off. So there's a lot of educational material for young players and parents, really, at them age groups. For the boys who then come in at full-time at 17 and 18, they're given individual dietary programs, pending what they need. So some might be to build muscle mass, some might be there's not many, but if they have to lose any body fat, there's elements of that. So it's important that obviously we do it right, because of the massive amount of investment that goes into the academy. We have to give them every opportunity, really. So we do have nutritionists, psychologists, the off-field type of programs that are all in place for young players and parents, because it's massively important. These boys are coming up and training 4 times a week, playing a game. What they then do and eat and put in their bodies is massively important to maximise their performance, which gives them the best chance to progress, really.
So one of your old coaches, Stu, when you were at the academy, who's a personal friend of mine, Hugh Macaulay. I mean, one of the things I asked Hughie probably 20 years ago, I said to Hughie, well, if you've got all the facilities, you just talked about lovely pitches, you got lovely nutritional foods, you got the best coaching staff, you got everything guided for that young player at 9 going through to 18, how do they fail? So his answer to me was 90% comes from you, 10% comes from the facility and the coach.
Yeah.
Is that
totally agree.
Okay.
Totally agree. I think from my perspective, we have to make sure I don't want players coming to me and blaming the football club and blaming the academy and blaming. I'll go, you can't blame us because we give you everything that you need. So at some point you have to look at yourself. I think as young players, and listen, I think the other one on that, Ray, is that we all know, I always say to young players to come in the system, you have to give it everything you've got. You've got to have the right attitude every single training session. You've got to work as hard as you possibly can. Right attitude. I think that before we talk about technical ability, game understanding, the two biggest things for me, do you work hard enough and have you got the right attitude? Because you may as well, if that's not the case and you haven't got a desire to go and be the best you can be, and you know what, if you fall short, don't fall short on them 3. Don't fall short on desire, commitment, work, effort. And if you fall short, if it's technically or tactically, you can walk away with your hands up and go, okay, I give it everything, and that's all you can do. Because we've had good players in our system who have come in and you thought, wow, technically, tactically, good players, but attitude, and it will catch them out. They may come in at 12 and look, and eventually it will catch them out because they'll still keep making the same mistakes around poor attitude, not applying themselves, going and eating the wrong foods before games. And so ultimately we have to give them everything so they haven't got to blame us. But then you're right, the other comes from within themselves. And as I say, if you fall short because of the technical, but you've given everything you've got, then you can walk away and know you've given everything. That's the most important message we give to our players. Because we've given, and it's another one, Phil Jones, and this is an interesting one. Phil Jones at 16 years of age, they were a bit, should we give him a scholarship or not? He wasn't a guaranteed cert. He was sort of middle of the group at 16. Should we give him and he went, you know what, because of how hard he works, his desire, his attitude, his work rate, he's technically short, he's tactically short at the moment, but that might get him further down the line. He signed, and I think we're in it, 3 years, he's been sold for 16 million.
Yeah, nice.
So he got that contract, that scholarship, based on them credentials, because technically he was short, tactically he was short, but he decided to take a risk because he wasn't going to fall short for them areas.
I'm going to add to that. You just talked about a second ago the competencies, and you talked about having that winning mentality, not necessarily for coaches on winning games and that the team needs to win, but the players have to have that winning mentality. And then if they win or lose as a team, that's neither here nor there, but because it is about developing individual players. And we've said it here, Ray, many a times, and coaches, I know you guys have heard me say it, and I know I've heard you guys say it. At a certain point, our job is to develop these players, because at a certain point, they're going to take off an Eastern badge. They're going to take off that badge. And did we develop a good player or not? Can they go to a college, and which many do, and we've got guys in a couple of weeks that are going to be on here doing a webinar as a former alumni. They get to college, the college coach says, I need a right back. Well, I only played forward for Eastern forever. Well, too bad. Are you going to play right back? Are you going to be on the bench or not be on the team? Well, if we didn't create the qualities or help them to reach their top potential with the playing qualities that they needed to have, then they wouldn't be able to play on that college team, because 99% of the time they're playing in a position that they weren't playing as a youth player. Well, if you don't have the qualities to play, then you're not going to play. So, and when we do a good job, then that's the player that plays a lot of minutes in college, like a few last year that played over 1,000 minutes in 18 games as freshmen in college. So to your point, right? It's already in your competencies regarding that winning attitude and mentality.
So, Stu, going back to the connection with us, and we've also had some of your coaches. We've flown some of your coaches over the past couple of years to help us with our camp over in America. Is that what was the feedback from the coaches when they came back on how we ran that camp and the kids that were in that camp, Stu?
Yeah, I think the first thing, Ray, is to say they didn't actually want to come back, so it must have been all right. No, but listen, they were really complimentary again, and I think that's one of the reasons, when we spoke about why Eastern and why you guys, I think even the messages that were coming out of the camps in terms of the structure, in terms of how you put it together, the program on offer for young players, was a massive plus. I think in terms of obviously them and the young players that they worked with, enthusiasm comes to mind, attitude, work rate. That's more important than anything to start with. And then you can work with players like that. You can work with technically and the other side. But they said about the enthusiasm, the commitment of the young players, the structure of the program, the camp itself was brilliant. And it's something that we spoke about that we'll be doing a lot more of, and more guys coming out and experiencing that. So that was the feedback with regards to that. Really, it was terrific.
Yeah. So right now, with the connection that we have, then Stu, we've been on both sides of the pond. You've had coaches from your side coming over and saying the same thing. We've gone over there with our coaching staff. A lot of our staff have been there over the years, and they've thoroughly enjoyed it, especially what's gone through it. And the players have enjoyed the academy. So we have been bridging a lot of, as we say, it's across the pond. So we have bridged those gaps. And I think, well, hopefully in today's world, I don't know where that's going to lead us, but I think this is one of the things that we've captured in, is getting onto the webinar, discussing these things. And I think we can move forward a lot better with the support of Blackburn. And we can also, you guys can go ahead and support us as well on this side. We're getting a good compliment from each other, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree right there.
A couple questions here. So we have two questions. One is, I'm going to go to Jason's first. So there's always questions here in the States. When do we want to specialize a player in a specific position? We know you have the competencies there for U9, U11, then U15, you put the competencies up there, which is great. And those are the competencies for a defender. And you'll have competencies for a midfielder, and you'll have competencies for a goalie, as well as competencies for an attacking player. But the question is always here, at what point are we going to, or are you there specializing where, you are going to be a defensive player? So focus on the defense, right? Are you doing that very young, or are you doing it gradually, or does it change? Could it change for a 17-year-old later on in their career?
Yeah, I think the way we do things, certainly from 9 to 11 in that what we call a foundation phase, it then goes to youth development phase 12 onwards. Certainly during them 3 age groups, we will rotate players around. We will. And listen, and part of that goes around, it's important to challenge young players and develop their learning experience of. So why can't a young player who's 10, who's always playing defence, why can't he go and play as a striker just to understand being at the top end of the pitch? And you may see from a defender's perspective, it may help. So it's important for us that during that foundation phase, they rotate positions, they play in different positions. Then we go 11v11 from 12 years of age. It becomes a little bit, but even during that year of 12, we're still rotating players round. It may be you may identify a centre back, but you may try and play him as a home midfielder. You may try and play him as a fullback. At that age, you're not going to really push him and play in the top end of the pitch. So that really kicks in with the set positions. When I say set positions, we even have players who have played fullback and dropped in as a forward or a centre-back there's still a little bit of rotation, but where we see them longer term sort of comes in more from that under 13 year group.
No, yeah, and we are similar in that approach. We like to rotate players. We get, there is some times where we have to have tough conversations because certain players or even certain parents and families only want them in one spot. And that's just hard to manage sometimes. If what happens when you have 15 players and 11 of them want to be forwards, we got to manage at 9, 10, 11 years old, right? Everyone wants to score a goal. So thanks. I'm sure you guys have some similar problems there. But,
I think the other one on that is the goalkeeping, because we spoke about as a club, we always tend to take 2 goalkeepers per age group. Now, when we've gone and played in Europe in some of the younger competitions, a lot of the clubs, including your German clubs, Dortmund, Bayern Munich, don't carry goalkeepers. So outfield players, they will rotate the outfield player in goal, which I think we're starting to look at it a little bit more and think, well, we just carry one. And you know what? Certainly, across the younger age group, sort of 9 to 11. And if the goalkeeper gets injured, the outfield player, because it's an experience, they've got to play out. We like to play out. So, and you know what? Who knows?
Yeah, well, right. And I'll tell you, FIFA did an analysis, and 85% of the time, goalkeepers are using their feet anyway. They need to be able to use their feet, period, to be a good goalkeeper down the line. And so, we run into that issue here. And so a lot of our teams do have 1 or 2 keepers, but there's a couple teams out there that, becomes a little frustrating because they don't have a dedicated keeper. Not everyone wants to be on the field or not everyone wants to be in the goal. And they might lose half their games simply because they didn't really have a dedicated keeper, right? But thank you for that. Another good question here is, do players in your academy, specifically younger players, right? So I'm maybe thinking players under the age of 15, play other sports, and your thoughts on that?
I think in general in the UK, in England certainly, as you guys know, our biggest sport is football. And every young kid wants to grow up being a footballer because of the massive rewards, I think, and what comes with it. I think what we do, and we value the importance of other sports because of what it can bring from a physical aspect. So we have players who come to us and say, "Oh, I want to do athletics outside the school," and we're all for it because I think it's massively important. Where certainly at younger age groups, that other sports can, whether it's coordination, whether it's balance, whether it's flexibility from a physical perspective, can have generating power, strength, where can have an impact. So we do encourage, where possible, that our players do experience some of the sports. But however, the other side to it is that we have a program. So they're in school, and then we have a program where they're coming up, as you've seen before, 4 times a week, playing a game on a Sunday. If they're on the day release program, all of a sudden you then start to think about the load of young players in terms of the amount of load that they're getting, in terms of the amount of training with us. How much have they got to go and do other things? So from that side, we sometimes we have to be a little bit selfish when we're investing, a large amount of money into the system. That listen, you can't go and do that because you've had a full day release. It's Wednesday night, you're back with us Thursday night. So we have to control it a little bit in terms of that because of the program that we have as well. But we do, where possible, try and encourage it to happen as much as we can without impacting and running the risk of injury on young players. Certainly as they're going through growth and maturation, 13, 14, they're big years, overload can that big a risk, really.
Yeah, I'm really happy you brought that up. We also, when we train 3 days a week, sometimes have a Saturday, Sunday game. Maybe Monday night's practice might be lighter than heavier. And then we hear, especially when they get to that puberty age of 14, 15, 16, and players want to play a bunch of sports because here, in the fall, there's soccer. In the winter, for high school sports, there's basketball and swimming and a couple other indoor sports, wrestling. And then in the spring, they're outdoors and there's baseball and there's tennis and there's track and field. And yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And then studies, we do encourage it. same as you with the younger ages, because actually a lot of us are PE teachers. About 5 of us are PE teachers, and we know that no matter what, it does help the athlete develop. But as they do get older and they start making up their mind that they want to be a college soccer player or whatever, but then they want to add 9 other sports, we're not going to say no, because we can't force anyone to not do it. But we do sort of guide them, because we've seen it year after year after year now that, okay, but you can't miss practice, and we can't miss, and we can't miss this, and we can't miss that. So how are you really going to make all of it work? Because at a certain point, something's going to crack. The dam's gonna flood, right? And I think it happens organically and naturally. Some players will begin to take a decision and they'll go one way, or they'll go another way, and that'll be fine too. So it's really good to hear your thoughts on that. Last few questions here before we wrap it up, but can you elaborate about a kid being able to attend a full day of school during a week, practice with the academy in England, how that works? I think that might be sort of unsure about the Wednesday programming, for example, and maybe the connection you have with the local schools, right?
Yeah, so the process behind that, we have head of education and player care who's full-time role within the academy. So we obviously they're on the hybrid training model. We make contact with the school to request that the boy can come in on day release. It's up to the school with regards to whether they don't, it's not by law and under the rules of the Premier League or the EFL Category 1 that they have to come in. But it's up to the school, so we have to work with the school. As I said before, if the players behind with grades, there's no chance the school, or they're performing and they're not applying themselves, there's no chance the school will allow them to come in. So we have to have them conversations really and come to an agreement with the school. And then obviously moving forward, if they are attending, it's closely monitoring the performance moving forward, really.
Right. Yeah, that's which I think is an amazing program that exists out there. And then listen, I'll give you one last question, which is from James, our Leeds guy. He asks here, do players keep their same coach year after year, or do they get changed, or how does that really work? Do you guys as an organization move coaches around every now and then, or how do you do it?
Yeah, I mean, the coaching structure within the academy system is that you'll always have a lead and an assistant coach per age group. So there'll be 2 coaches per age group. So what we tend to do is that after, for example, under 9 year, the players will move to 2 new coaches, the under 10 coaches. So they will stay with their age group, really, which we feel, listen, it works for us, because I think sometimes you will get players who relate to coaches better than other coaches. That's just natural. You know, that will happen. So we tend to stick. It's 2 coaches will stay with the same age group and won't move with the group. And I think the experience of players getting, as they go through the system, different voices, different minds, different thoughts, I think is important, especially when you've got key decisions to make as well, where we have to sit down and make decisions. So yeah, players won't stay with the same coach. They will move and the coach will stay. However, what I will say is that as an academy at the end of each season, I will sit down with our head of coaching and we'll make decisions. We may feel as though a certain partnership of coaches isn't working or isn't as effective. We may see an assistant, you know what, he's got the credentials to go and be a lead, and we may move things around, or if opportunities come up at the end, which tend to be the end of the season with coaches, we may bring someone from assistant, because there's got to be, I think it's important that there's a pathway for coaches as well as players. I think it's massively important. So we have to... No,
thanks for that. And do you ever have situations where coaches will have 2 age groups? So he might get a player at U10, but then he'll get him back again at U15 or something like that? So you might get that at some point?
Yeah, I think the only way that would happen is, I don't know, there being U10, that one of the U10 coaches goes and gets the U15 job, but the coaches will only have 1 team within the system, and that's the rules govern that as well, Bo, in terms of for Category 1 rules, you have to have 2 age group coaches per team, and obviously there's only 1 team. I know sometimes you'll have in the US where you'll have 2 teams for the same age group. There's only 1 group of players, and each squad, average number of players per squad is normally around 18 players.
All right, really good. Final question just came in. What about the summertime? So what do you do? Do your players have a summer program or any guidance or some type of off-season programming you give them?
Yeah. So our program for 9s to 16s will run from, it kickstarts mid-August through to probably July, where they will have breaks when the school break. So we have a half term in October, so our programme will shut down for 9 to 16s when the school during that period. The 17s and 18s who are full-time players, they will get a summer programme. They will tend to finish, they're a little bit different, finish mid-May when the Premier League season finishes, and then come back for pre-season first week in July. So they will have obviously programmes in terms of physical programmes, technical programmes, nutritional diet plans to take away during that break. But anytime there's a break, I mean, it's been great. Obviously, it hasn't been great, but in terms of being able to use Zoom as an online platform at the moment. So every morning we've been on physical sessions with the players, observing them doing physical sessions in the garden, on field. So it's been good in that point that we can sort of manage that process, and they get a lot of support when they're not at the academy.
No, phenomenal. Listen, from me and from the club, if there aren't any other questions, thank you so much. What you've done is amazing, and it's eye-opening. I know Ray wants to say a few words, but Stuart, always a pleasure, my man. And I'm sure we'll be talking soon. Well, we got to talk a Tuesday morning, but next chance you get over here, you got to get over here and see some of the kids play.
Oh, definitely.
Well, Stu, for me, again, I want to thank Stuart for coming on there, taking his time. A great thing to have today, that's for darn sure. The other thing, I'd like to thank all the parents and players for joining, getting in there. I hope this was a big insight and it's a major connection for our club to have somebody like Stuart, who's a personal friend of mine, and a great club, great history behind it. But again, I also want to thank our coaches for stepping in and doing that. We'll be talking to Stuart on Tuesday, but again, thanks for taking the time out, guys, in these crazy times that we have. But again, thanks for staying on, and I hope it was some insight to what our connection is to across the pond friends. So, Stu, stay safe, pal.
Yeah, listen, just before I do go, I just again, Ray, Bo, and everyone at the club, I really appreciate obviously you taking the time out to just come and listen, and hopefully you've taken some key points from it and messages. But I just like to say I'm really excited about the future and working with you guys, because I think you mirror very much what we're about, which, as I said at the start, is really important. And it'd be great if I can get over there pretty soon and meet, obviously the coaches, and which you already have with some, but it'd be great to meet everyone and come and watch some games and watch you guys play, and it'll be really exciting. But I look forward that this partnership will grow, and hopefully you as players, parents and coaches will benefit from that as well. So really appreciate your time, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stu. Bye now. Be safe.